Okay, Joe, we have had episodes and a blog post even where we've talked about the power of no and saying no and really turning things down to get what you want. But we haven't really talked about the guilt associated with it because I think a lot of people struggle with saying no because they feel bad that they're turning people down. But at the same time, so many solopreneurs feel overwhelmed because they have too much to do, when in reality, it's because they're saying yes to things that don't serve the life that they've designed. So they feel super overwhelmed. And that's what I want to talk about today, if you're good with that.
Okay, I am.
So with our new framework and our new lens on everything, I think people need to start, if you're wanting to create a life first solopreneur business, you need to start with this question before anything else. Does this opportunity that's coming my way serve the life I designed? Not, is this a good opportunity? Not, can I handle this? The filter should just be the design, not the capacity. Because again, you do not want to go back to a 9 to 5 or 7 to 7 in some cases. And people bring those habits with them. So I figure we should reiterate what the cost of saying yes is to everything. And then maybe give some scenarios of when people may not want to say no, but they should. And then walk through that. So the cost of saying yes to everything. Here's how I like to look at it. Every yes is a no to something else, usually something you actually care about. And it took me a while to do this. When I first went out on my own, I said yes to everything because there was money coming in the door, right? It's so easy to do, but then it's also so easy to burn out. And then you lose those clients anyway because you're all burned out and you're not producing the work you should. Saying yes to a project you don't want means saying no to rest, to focus, and to the work that actually matters. And I think the hidden cost here is resentment, because then you start resenting the people you said yes to, and they didn't do anything wrong. It's your fault. But you start not liking them because you said yes to something you shouldn't have said yes to. Have you ever done that?
Have I said yes to things I shouldn't say
And
yes
then
to?
resented the people for it, even though they had nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yes, and it actually kind of framed it into a concept. And this was going back to my last startup called Trade Area Systems. And, early in the days, it's like, oh, it's a customer. They want to spend money. Let's do whatever they want. And, I came up with the saying that, special customers eventually turn into problem customers, right? So the idea of taking somebody that's not kind of in your wheelhouse, not kind of that matching that thing that you've defined your business to offer is, you have to treat them special. And like I said, and eventually that becomes the problem. So yes, it's a rampant problem. And all of us kind of people that like to not hurt people's feelings or let people down tend to say, yeah, I'll do it. And then, as you say, you're giving up on something else. One thing the context going back to way back in the day of Stephen Covey and that 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he framed it very nicely. He said, his boss came to him and told him, I need this thing done and I need it done right away. And his answer was, okay, here's all the things I'm working on now. Which of these should I either not do or delay? And, obviously you don't have a boss coming to you with that, but you have potential customers and other people and family and so to think about it that way, what's going to give, what's going to give if I do this is a good perspective.
I think the other thing, and I don't know if I've told you this, but my biggest pet peeve is when people are like, oh my gosh, I'm so busy. Oh my gosh, I just have so much going on. And they wear kind of as a badge of honor, like, oh, I have so much to do. And I think it's because overcommitment doesn't look like failure. Having nothing to do looks like failure. So people will hide behind overcommitting to things because it looks like success on the outside, honestly. But that's what makes it so dangerous, because that's when you start self-sabotaging, burning out and everything. But it's the whole, I'm so busy, as opposed to saying, I don't have any clients and I was just sitting on my couch working like that. You know what I mean? There's a stigma with resting in our culture, I think. But as a life first business, maybe you're not resting, but you're trying to create the business where you're not glued to your
I
work.
feel like my generation and was one of the ones that really invented that concept
Yes.
of, oh, I remember this story. I don't know why I'm going back, but this was going back to the early days of Dell Computer. And this guy was a higher up at Dell, was bragging to the people that worked for him that he had a newborn baby born 6 weeks ago and he hadn't seen the baby yet.
Yeah.
So that is the kind of ethos that, and I think the millennials and the Gen Alphas, Gen Zs, I mean, are questioning this, and I think it's really good that they are. But the idea of, just like you say, being busy, working, feeling, I'd be in the office at 8 o'clock at night and feel proud. Oh, I'm working until 8 o'clock at night, and it's like, if I can not work and have a situation where the business is still moving forward, that's fantastic. I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, if I can not have to put in a day's work and still, make a living, I've built a heck of a business.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so Joe, let's talk about a few scenarios that people may run into where they're like, "Ooh, I really think I should say yes," even though they really should say no. I think the first is like, I'll call it the great exposure opportunity. So let's say someone asks you to speak in an event or join a panel or collaborate on a project for visibility or something, and it sounds great on paper, but then you think about the prep time, the travel, and the energy costs, which are all super real. So even though these are great opportunities, still run it through that filter. Does this serve the life I design, or does it serve someone else's idea of what my career should look like? And maybe it does serve the life you want. Maybe your goal was to travel and see the world, and your job will help you do that. In that case, go for it. But if you wanted to design your business because you didn't want to miss a soccer game, you didn't want to miss school pickups and do that, then is it worth taking on these great exposure opportunities if it'll pull you away from your other life priorities and what you really want your business to serve? And
Yeah,
so,
that example, I had it recently. I was invited to speak in Boston, which is 2 hours away, and to a crowd of entrepreneurs. And, there was maybe some upside in it for the business, maybe. They're entrepreneurs, not solopreneurs, but some of them might become solopreneurs. It was kind of a bit of an honor because it's a really amazing organization that I've been part of or involved in for many years. But I had to say no because I just didn't have the bandwidth. This business is requiring a lot right now. And I did not have the bandwidth to turn around and carve out the time to prepare the talk, to drive 2 hours each way, depending on the time of day, I probably would have had to stay over. So, but they're exactly right. I mean, it was tempting. The ego was going, but I had to make that decision to serve the business better,
yeah,
to serve my life better.
totally. I think another thing that people end up saying yes to when they shouldn't is a client who pays really well, like really well, but drains you. So the retainer's good. And again, and I know sometimes it's a beggars can't be choosers situation with money, but again, this is why design is so important from the get-go. Because some people want to end up in situations where the retainer is good, but every interaction leaves you frustrated or compromising your standards. It's exactly what you were just talking about with this quote unquote special customer or the special client. And money is, of course, part of the life you designed. It's still a business after all, but it's not the whole design. And that's what makes all of this so different. So again, run it through the filter. And saying no here might mean a short-term revenue dip, but it also opens the slot for a client who fits. And then you can have the revenue and the desired life first business. But I say this all the time.
Just a thought on that. It's because you're absolutely right. But sometimes it's hard to take this, maybe it's one of your first clients and they help put you on the map, but they're just, awful to deal with or difficult to deal with or don't respect boundaries. And sometimes instead of saying no, which might be just too hard to just turn around and say, no, I'm not going to, I'm firing you as a client. That's just a bridge too far.
Yeah.
You can do things like, raise your prices. impose limitations. Say, look, I will not respond to your emails after 5 p.m. until the next day, or I can only do one call, every other week with you now because I'm changing my business. And what will happen is you'll basically motivate them to quit because, or it'll fix the situation.
Yeah.
Right. So saying no sometimes doesn't mean saying no. It might be, tweaking the relationship to the point where they say no and it's more comfortable for you.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I'm so glad you said that. Okay. So here's another one that people run into. There's a ton of examples. This is the last one I want to use, but I feel like people, especially when they're starting out and they want to get reps or they're extremely experienced and people know that and go to them. But when you take on an opportunity that's a favor for a friend or a peer, this is going to be so hard. So a friend in your industry asks you to help with something, whether it's consulting, reviewing their strategy, jumping on a call. Obviously, human nature, especially if it's a friend, you want to be generous, but the guilt kicks in immediately. And so, again, run it through the filter. And generosity, I would say, is a part of a well-designed life, but not at the expense of your own priorities every single time. So I would say it's okay to say no and just say, I can't right now. And you don't need to offer a reason. I think people are so inclined to be like, oh, I can't because XYZ. You just say, oh, what a fun opportunity. I just can't right now. And then just leave it at that. Because then if you keep going, it opens the door for negotiations or getting guilt tripped into actually doing it.
Great point.
As opposed to just saying, oh, I can't right now. And then you don't owe them any explanation.
Yeah. I just can't.
Yeah.
Not I won't.
Yeah.
I can't.
I've been practicing with this with my next door neighbor. So good about protect. She's so good at boundaries. She's one of my very best friends. And she's so good at being like, I go home and be like, hey, do you want to come over for dinner? Just stop over. I made extra stuff. She'd be like, no, we can't. The end. It doesn't have to be a business thing. And it's so refreshing to the point I've gone to start saying that. It's like, oh, can you come over to our house for XYZ? And it's like, sorry, I can't. And it seems cold, but it's also just like, no, protect your boundaries and don't invite discussion.
The thing that is interesting about that is it's actually a negotiating tactic in general. This thing, I can't. And it's funny because, when we negotiate with people or, over contracts or whatever it is, I learned the hard way that sometimes somebody would come back and say, well, it might be the board won't let me. I can't, I wanted something and the board won't allow us to do that.
Yeah.
And the person comes off as having less power, and yet that makes their position stronger. And I think you're leaning into that kind of concept when you say, I can't.
Yeah.
Not I won't. I don't want to. I'm too busy. Those are all things where it's like you can, like you said, you can negotiate. Well, you're too busy. Well, if I could help you with your, whatever in return, and that's not going to go well. But you don't want to tell them that their help isn't useful.
Yeah.
So the idea of saying I can't basically makes you powerless. And that's good when it comes to negotiating, because they just go, oh, they can't do it. It's not that they won't, they don't care, they don't like me. It's just can't do it.
Yeah. You know what I started saying for our show? Because we actually get countless outreach emails to us now on a daily basis for guests on our show. And we literally just don't have the bandwidth for everybody. And so I started saying, if it's a pitch, I've started saying, this sounds wonderful. However, it doesn't align with our current content strategy. That way it's not a knock on them. And it is true. If I say no to somebody, it's because it genuinely doesn't align with our show. But that's it.
We get people coming in, I built a 4,000 person company and we do $100 million a year in revenue. And it's like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, but it doesn't apply.
Doesn't apply. Not our strategy. So anyway, this is just a reminder that no is your friend. There's the power in no. And so I would say, as a challenge this week, think of one thing that will come across your desk that you normally say yes to out of habit or obligation. And before you respond, just ask, does this serve the life I want? And that's my 2 cents, Joe.
Very good. Good stuff.
Well, listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, leave that 5-star review. It helps us spread the word to other solopreneurs looking to build a life first business. Share this episode with another solopreneur, woo, you know that you think would find this episode helpful, and subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform, including YouTube. And we'll see you next time on the Aspiring Solopreneur.